Oliver was a young entrepreneur who had a deep interest in art. Even though life was very competitive, he always said, "I am very ambitious," and worked harder than everyone else. One morning, while staying at a hotel, his sister texted him, "When will you leave the hotel? And, how many more days will you stay at the hotel?" Oliver replied, "I need to go over my plans before I present my work." He walked into his room and stood in front of his easel. On the blank canvas, he started a rough sketch. Soon, he began a charcoal drawing using charcoal, carefully adding shading to create depth and improve the proportion of the objects. His painting was a still life mixed with a distant landscape. In the center, there was a statue, which became the focal point of the artwork. He paid attention to every fine detail, adjusting the texture and experimenting with hue, shade, tint, and saturation. At some point, he used scissors to cut paper shapes and glue them onto the painting. Then he picked up a palette knife, an ink pen, and even a sponge to create new effects. Before painting, he had applied primer, and after finishing, he covered it with varnish. "This could be my masterpiece," he thought. After hours of work, he felt tired. "I might wear out," he said, but he continued. "One of the reasons I do this is because of my passion." The next day, at the exhibition, a strict referee examined his painting. The room was filled with different styles, including abstract art and a giant mural. Oliver's work stood out because of its perfect balance and accurate scale. A man looked at the painting and said, "This doesn't make sense." "You're talking nonsense." Oliver calmly replied, "If you pay attention, you will understand. What I'm saying is that art is not always logical." A woman nearby smiled and said, "I love this. I can feel the inspiration behind it." Oliver nodded and said, "Thank you." At that moment, a child ran into the room. His father shouted, "Behave well." Oliver laughed and said, "Don't worry. I'm responsible for you, but seriously, if anything happens to you, my life will be over." Later that evening, there was a grand feast. People were sharing ideas and stories. A British guest said, "The British have a saying I love very much, why not?" An American guest added, "Americans have a saying I love, it's your choice." Oliver smiled and said, "I chose this path rather than an ordinary life. I put everything into my art." In the end, he realized that being brave, following your inspiration, and truly loving what you do is the key to success.